Hello everyone. Today I will show you how I made an anime opening using Blender. I start the creation process by modeling the geometry and always looking at references of the environment I want to create. The question I ask myself is, what would this look like if it were in a real anime? This thought is what dictates all of the artistic decisions I will dive into later in this video. Most of my workflow consists of 3D modeling, using grease pencil and drawing on top of my scene. I include other techniques such as simulations and rotoscoping where needed. I will now showcase how I make a scene from scratch. I start by modeling a rough blockout of the scene I am envisioning, primarily using cubes and planes. The focus should be on the shapes of the objects and not really on the quality of the geometry, as their purpose is only to guide the grease pencil. Don't overthink the process, keep everything simple and always check if the line art looks good. I apply the material to one object and work my way to the rest of the scene by duplicating it and changing the color. The first focus is always the lighting. I add various passes of shadowing and highlights, as well as volumetrics, lens flares and dust particles. This little scene was put together as a demonstration, but the technique can definitely be expanded on. In this incomplete work, I used Blender's denoiser to blur my render and used a very similar technique to stylize it. This is just to demonstrate that there are a lot of styles you can apply these ideas to. I decorated most of my scenes using variations of the same basic shader, which I will soon demonstrate how to create. As you can see, the simple setup can be used to create compelling scenes. This step can be done in different ways, as various styles and techniques can be used to recreate the anime aesthetic. Some possibilities could be painting textures or PBR materials. I found that paying close attention to lighting was the most important part of my workflow. The main shader uses a color ramp to control the intensity and coloring of the shadows, which then gets multiplied on the albedo. I create a rim lighting effect using a layer weight node and clamping the values using another color ramp. You can also create the rim lighting using ambient occlusion or curvature. I break up the shadows by mixing in some noise. It's probably easier if you convert the noise texture to a normal map and plug that directly into the BSDF instead of doing what I did here. Making the music was a challenging aspect of the project. Not knowing any music theory, I relied on my hearing to develop an understanding of the rock genre. Unfortunately, MIDI alone cannot capture this genre's energy as the instruments sound too lifeless. I got help from my friends Igor and Rinke for live drums and recording of the guitars respectively. Rinke also offered to mix the entire song for me. Igor and Rinke are professionals and much more skilled at music than I am. You can find links to both of them in the description. Please check them out, it will be worth your time. For vocals, I contacted AJ Sparks on Fiverr, being pleased by his voice acting commissions. After several conversations with him, he delivered his singing, which fits very nicely in the final mix. And now for some extra tips that were too small to make it into a category of their own. Impact frames are quite simple. Think of the animation as a build-up of tension that looks similar to a spike. The top of the spike is where the impact frame should be placed. You can get creative with it and play with the build-up a lot. For my flashbang scene, I created 2 impact frames, one for the ignition and one for the explosion. A lot of animators use harmony cells to emphasize cliffhangers. I used this technique in my final shot to give it a nice bittersweet feeling. Here are some scrap shots and test renders that didn't make it into the final cut. Thank you for watching. You can find the animation in the description or at the end of this video. If you want to support what I do, subscribe and consider donating. I have a lot more projects coming soon.